Educators Amplified, 1510 AM WRRD. My name is Earl Ingram. I'm going to be part host of this special event.
The percentage of students in Wisconsin who are economically disadvantaged has more than doubled since 2000. There exists an almost absolute correlation between poverty, family health, other socioeconomic factors, and the educational success of our children, yet public schools are often blamed for disparities in educational outcomes. They didn't cause these disparities for the most part. As governor, what will you push, specifically what programs, policies would you push to dramatically reduce poverty and racial disparities in wealth and income so that all Wisconsin's children have an opportunity to succeed?
This morning I had breakfast at Mr. Perkins' restaurant, 20th and Atkinson. I've lived in this city all my life, my adult life. This is the most hyper-segregated city in the country. When it comes to solving the evil of racism, we could be here a long time, and it's the most important issue really in society. I want to talk about economic opportunity for people in this city. The fact of the matter is, as governor, even with a Republican legislature, I have the executive order power. I can mandate hiring on state jobs that will be fully diverse. I can sit down with industry in the state and in the city. For instance, Northwestern Mutual, when it built this building, did a wonderful job on that in terms of diverse hiring, and the glass work was done right here in the city. It was cruel of Scott Walker to turn down that $800 million in train money. Those trains would have been constructed at 35th and Capitol, in the former A.O. Smith plant that has sustained generations. Ollie Thompson, my friend, many people, sustained many people with good salaries. Obviously, getting rid of right to work and restoring prevailing wage. When union wages go up, and African Americans in unions, non-union wages go up, I would raise the minimum wage. And the fact is that we're going to have a hiring program funded by the state that to restore and to rebuild the infrastructure of the state, the roads in the state, and that is going to be absolutely diverse. I want to put to work people in Milwaukee who all want to work and have been discriminated against in employment. Cash comes first, jobs come first, economic opportunity comes first, because when you have the ability to spend money, people want your money, and they'd be darn glad to see you.
Part of the answer is changing our school funding approach. Right now, we focus solely on property value. We focus on the ability of communities to pay based on property value. And we've got to introduce student need into that formula. If a school is serving more young people who are coming to school hungry, or who are homeless, or who have developmental disabilities, or who are simply living in poverty, they need more resources to properly meet the needs of those kids. That should be built into our school funding formula. But then the other thing that we've got to acknowledge is that whatever problems exist in the community inevitably come to school. And scapegoating schools for problems that are being poorly addressed or not addressed at all in the community is simply scapegoating schools. It's not getting us close to making these inequities or these disparities, which are really savage inequalities, go away. So, yeah, we got to go out in communities and make sure that every worker's got a living wage and that there's health care for all. And we've got to empower people from the bottom up. I call it geyser economics. Economic prosperity gushes up. It does not trickle down.
Malin?
If we do not fix the income inequality, if we do not fix our healthcare system, if we do not fix the ability for teachers and workers to sit down at the table and be able to talk to their employer, or in this case a school district, about hours, wages, and working conditions, then we won't fix anything. I agree with Mike on this. The achievement gap is not the teacher's problem necessarily. It is about the community, and the community is funded by the government, and the government has to decide its priorities. We have a $77.1 billion state budget, a biennial budget, and that's a list of your priorities. So if every governor were to take education as one of their most important priorities, then we would do well. So I can tell you specifics. I will change the per pupil rate, because right now in our state, not every child is getting the same education. There are districts, there are kids that are not getting the same education as those districts that actually have money and that are thriving. And that's a problem. But again, we shouldn't be sitting here putting ourselves against each other, because we have to bring it all together, because education should be a nonpartisan issue. It shouldn't be about Republican versus Democrat. It should be about how do we build ourselves together? How do we rise together? And we only do that by making education our number one priority, because that's our greatest commodity, and that's what I'm going to work on.
Ted, as you probably know, I've proposed fair funding for our future plan for years. We are going to get that through. And the reason that's important around issues of poverty is that it weights kids that need an extra lift. That's the basic issue of equity, is if kid needs an extra lift, they should get it, and it's going to cost more. We need to have things in our funding system that weights kids with disabilities, that provides additional resources for kids that are English learners, kids for poverty, the whole 9 yards. In Milwaukee, you would have $1,600 per student more right now with my plan. Bottom line. The second thing that's really important for us to think about is to make sure that we invest in early childhood. In the poorest areas of this city and across the state, we have very few high-quality early childhood programs, and we can do that. Early childhood education is an investment. It's not a cost. It pays off at the end. We need more high-quality early childhood in our urban areas and rural areas where there is high poverty. And the third thing, we have to fix our correctional institutions that sends poor people to prison with that. Frankly, white people are not sent to prison, they have means. We need to keep people out of the prison system, and that will also create jobs to get people to work and have less poverty.
Kelda Royce, please.
So, of course, we have to address the funding inequities in our schools, but the question is really about the community. How are we going to end poverty in our community that has been persistent and generational based on the divestment of resources? We need recommitment to ensuring that every single child, no matter which zip code he or she is born into and how much his or her parents make, is going to have access to universal early childhood education that is a public good and publicly funded, that their schools are well funded, that they have adequate safe housing, that their parents have enough income, whether it's from public source or from a job, that they can actually raise that child and not in poverty. And so that's a combination of increasing public resources and specifically in communities that have been neglected and underinvested in for decades, and making sure that the private sector does its part and raising our minimum wage so that it's a living wage, and freeing communities like Milwaukee to set their own policies for workers so that there can be living wages in those communities, and addressing issues like housing and childcare that are huge costs for families that are, as Tony said, it's an investment in our future when we make that possible for every single child. Please check out my website.